266. It's going to be incredible. Can't wait to talk about it. Before we do, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, give us your comments, your interaction, your feedback. We love it. We need it. Thank you for following us on the MMA journey so far. Can't wait to get into UFC 266. Matter of fact, the first fight on the card, it features Jessica Andrade.
Wait, before we get into that, let's talk about last week's Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann.
You almost caught me slipping. You almost cut me slipping. All right. So what do you think of the fight?
A great fight. It surprised me a little bit. I give Anthony Smith more kudos and apologize for, not believing as much as I thought he was, but he looked great. He's carrying heavier weight. We heard that from the interview. He's carrying extra weight. He looks great. He looks smooth, and he's packing a lot of power. Something that I didn't expect. I thought Spann was going to be, but every time Anthony's touched him, man, he was really hurting him.
Anthony was fighting with fury, man. He was fighting with a vengeance. You put the poll up last week, and I noticed most people had voted for Spann. And on first glance, I mean, yeah, right, of course. But I picked Anthony to win. I thought he might. He seemed like he was in a good headspace, and he was a crafty veteran. That was my thought. And he ended up getting in there and getting a nasty finish. So good for him. And, coming out of that, he immediately got his next fight against someone he's lost to, a European fighter named Alexander Rakic, who's a big, powerful, super athlete kind of guy. And really, he fought Anthony and just kind of controlled him last time. So in Anthony's mind, he lost, but he didn't get beat up. And he wanted that fight back. He knows that he needs a couple, like we said last week, 2-3 wins. And he's right there in title, maybe 1 or 2 wins, excuse me. He's right there in title contendership. And if he can get this one back off Alexander Rakic, yeah, he's right in there for a title shot. So we're excited to see that.
See how it shakes up at the top, because, with another performance like that, I really believe he would arguably maybe get another shot at that.
And, they're at 205, okay, for folks at home who haven't followed maybe the last big champion you remember at light heavyweight is John Jones. Well, there was a whole string of changes for that belt. And right now the current belt holder is Jan Blachowicz. He's fighting Glover Teixeira. Those are both guys that Anthony could potentially beat. I know he was brutally beaten by Glover Teixeira in the past, but I think this new Anthony has got a chance to win the belt. And there's other dark horses in there. Yuri Prohaska is a guy to watch. There's a lot of cool fighters at 205 coming up, but Anthony's right there in the mix. So I'm excited to see what he can do on this championship journey. And there's several other fighters going on a championship journey this weekend. Before I move on to that, anything else you want to say about Anthony and Ryan Spann?
Yeah. Up to 266, baby.
The train just keeps rolling, baby.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a lot of cool fights on the prelims and the early prelims. I mean, just to give some credence to these folks, I know we won't talk about them at length, but you got a card where Dan Hooker is on a prelim. I mean, this guy is a fighter's fighter. Both he and his opponent are battling visa issues because they're foreign fighters trying to come to the United States, and they're dealing with lockdowns and COVID and all these other things. They don't have COVID. They're dealing with the lockdowns associated with COVID. They're trying to get to the fight. You got Roxanne Modafferi on the
a favorite.
A fan favorite. Yes, the Happy Warrior. There's just so many good fighters on the prelims, but we got to roll to the main event or to the main card. So let's start off with that. We mentioned last week about Jessica Andrade. She is her nickname is I forgot how to say it in Portuguese, but it basically means the pile driver. She's short, she's stocky, she has big explosive movements in her hands, big punches, and hardcore slams, as current strawweight champ Rose Namajunas understands quite well, because she got dumped on her head by Jessica Andrade. This girl is a powerhouse. And she is fighting knockout power.
Yes.
And she is fighting, and she's also just a berserker, man. She'll get in close, just pick your ass up and slam you. I mean, this is just old school fighting. She's awesome. She is fighting a girl named Cynthia Calvillo. If you don't know her, she is, she's young. She is a wrestler by trade. she's had a checkered past in terms of her MMA career. She's missed weight several times. She's been, had to take time off due to marijuana use, which is, especially at the time, it's actually, the rule has changed. But at the time, if you got busted by the anti-doping agency, USADA, for marijuana in your system during, certain times of, in and around the fight, you could have a no contest. So she's had all this drama, but she's and she used to fight at 115. She's moving up to 125. No more weight cut. Hopefully, no more weight issues. She's fighting at 125, and she might make a splash. I mean, the champion at the top, who we'll talk about later, Valentina Shevchenko, at 125 is just an absolute buzzsaw. So just a couple interesting points on this fight, I'll say, is Cynthia's coming off a loss. She's an underdog in this fight. She's coming off of a loss to Caitlin Chookagian, who is a long-rangey fighter in this division. Jessica Andrade has beaten Caitlin Chookagian with body shots. Who else has beaten Caitlin Chookagian? Valentina Shevchenko. So a lot of them have common opponents. You would look at it and say Cynthia is probably the least impressive of them all. But there is something called MMA math. Just because you lost to this girl and I beat that girl doesn't mean I can beat you. It's like rock, paper, scissors sometimes. Styles make fights.
Yes, all the time.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to see this one. Jessica's the favorite, and she's like I said, a powerhouse. But anything you want to say about Jessica or Cynthia?
I would say I'm curious about Jessica with the OnlyFans leakage. I want to know if it plays a part.
Leakage. I don't know
what
leakage is.
Leakage. Rumors. What heard is that she's paid for someone paid for them. They got put out, whatever. But I still want to know if it affects her in any kind of way. Is it something as a distraction? Is it something that money's really good? So what happens? So I'm interested to see what happens with how she comes out, how she flows, how she feels. Is it a distraction? Is it not? But we'll see what happens.
I'm interested to see if the broadcast will mention it. If not, that's what I'm interested in. Will they mention it? And kudos to her for being an entrepreneur and in a body
shaming.
Well, let her be free. Let her be proud. All good to me. So anyway, what's the next fight after that one?
Oh, nice. It's going to be Rosenstrike versus Curtis Blaze.
Oh, yeah.
Which is going to be an amazing fight. That fight is going to take, a power puncher and a true wrestler. A wrestler with nasty ground and pounds versus Rosenstrike, who's a lot of kicks, a lot of punches, going to want to stay active on the feet, wants to stay on the feet, doesn't want to go to the ground. And it's going to pretty much going to see what happens with that. So I'm interested in seeing how that's going to play out. Is Rosenstrike going to be able to stuff the takedowns of Curtis Blaze? Now, Rosenstrike's coming off a win, but he's also lost to Ngannou, which is the current champ, and there's an interim champ, but he's the current champ,
right?
Legitimate champ. So he came off a loss to him, but he's all back on the win. Which on the other side, you have Curtis Blaze, who had a brutal knockout his last fight by the Black Beast, which is another fan favorite. So I'm interested to see what does he change. The
Black Beast.
You got to bring it. And now you got to bring it down. You got to bring it down and show everybody.
The Black Beast. Look at this. So this theme might come back later in the show. This is a bobblehead from MMAbobbleheads.com, run by a guy named Dave Manley. I mean, these are all done in conjunction, in partnership with the fighters, officially licensed by the fighters. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with UFC. I mean, just look at the detail. Of course, your boy's rocking with the signed version, of course. But yeah, absolutely, man. Check, these bobbleheads are awesome. They'll come back around later. I will talk about that later.
But back to the fight. It's going to be interesting. I want to see what does he do, right? Because the last fight he got baited into a shoot with he shot right on to a uppercut from the Black Beast. So it's going to be interesting. Like you said, he's lost to Ngannou. So it's going to be interesting what they do with this fight going forward.
Yeah, what they do with it. That's a great point. Both guys have lost to Ngannou. Curtis has lost to Ngannou twice, like you said.
Yeah.
So, if Ngannou fights Ciryl Gane, that's the next fight. So as you were saying, Ngannou's the lineal champion. He beat Stipe Miocic for that belt. There were disputes about when they wanted to have a fight with Derek Lewis, the Black Beast, in Houston, and they wanted that to be a title fight. Ngannou couldn't answer the call for whatever reason, traveling to his native Cameroon, whatever, I don't know. And so Ciryl Gane stepped in. Ciryl Gane fights for the interim belt and beats the Black Beast. And so, interesting scenario. Ciryl Gane has beaten Rosenstrike, outclassed him on the feet with finesse and skill and just incredible athleticism. He's so light on his feet, which is really impressive. And Ngannou has beaten Rosenstrike. That was the one where Ngannou basically just charged across the cage and beat him with just a few just went mad on him, went insane on him, and just beat him within a few seconds. So it was not really a good showing for Jairzinho. So like you say, what do they do with the winner of this? I think maybe the winner of this fights Stipe. I don't know. John Jones is looming as a potential comeback in 2022. So I don't know. It doesn't set either guy up for an immediate title shot. I'll tell you that.
But it's a good name for either one of the fighters to have on the resume, right? It's a great name for either one of them. So let's roll into the next fight with Nick.
I told you that the bobblehead theme would be coming back. Nick Diaz from the 209 Stockton. So, fans who are newer to the sport, I'm going to do a little unboxing session right here, too. Look at this. Oh, you know what? This might tell you all you need to know about Nick Diaz. That's my man, blowing smoke, signing autographs, certificate of authenticity. So all this comes with the certificates of authenticity, comes with the official, all that official stuff. Let's do a little unbox right here. Now, we didn't plan to do this. It's kind of off the cuff. So, something don't work out just right. Look at this. Booyah. Nick Diaz signed. Look at that signature. You can't tell what the hell that is. He just scribbled on that. And then, you know what? This pose might say it all, man. This pose might say it all. What? I'm interested in this fight. This is, first of all hardcore longtime fans are going to be interested in this fight. If you're new to the sport, you may have never even heard of his brother Nate Diaz, but Nate Diaz is at this current moment a little bit more famous than his brother Nick. The reason is Nick has been off.
Has been vice versa from the past.
Oh, yeah. Nick has been off for 6 years. Prior to that layoff, this 6-year-long layoff, which is kind of almost unheard of to come back after that long of a layoff. I can't think of anyone else who's done it successfully. Maybe,
John.
And it's 6 years? It wasn't a 6-year lay.
No.
Nowhere close.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So that is a really long layoff in MMA, in a sport that evolves faster than, anything. So, so he's been off for 6 years. And you're right. Prior to that 6-year layoff, Nick Diaz was the more famous of the two. Nate Diaz really became, I knew about him from The Ultimate Fighter, and he's always had a great attitude. Plus, he was associated with Nick Diaz. But he really got his bump up in fame and I'm talking about the younger brother, Nathan Diaz, fought Conor McGregor. Ended up having a 2-fight series with him, 1-1, and the rubber match is out there. So Nate Diaz is the more famous brother right now, but his brother Nick was the big brother before, and he was the one winning belts in Strikeforce. He's got one of the more impressive resumes, not necessarily the wins there, but his opponent list. He is the only one I could think of who's kind of fought this Mount Rushmore of MMA. BJ Penn, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva. He's fought all three of those. I mean, there's no one else who can lay claim to that. In prime time. I think he lost to all three. I think he has L's to all three. Well, no. Anderson Silva, who just got a nice win against who did he just KO in boxing? Tito Ortiz. who was another guy who took a long layoff and fought Chuck Liddell. And that was a whole fiasco. That was so stupid. But anyway, talking about, so he that was a no contest, actually, because Anderson Silva tested positive for steroids, and Nick Diaz tested positive for what? Marijuana. Go figure with the picture, right? So I'm excited to see him back. There are concerns. I know you've expressed some concerns to me. What are your thoughts?
I'm just hoping that we're not going to see a Holyfield, a former shell of what fans are anticipating, right? We know what Nick's bringing. The hardcore fans have seen him fight. He has that same mentality as Nick. Go out there and in your face, bunch of volume, nonstop, bloody wars. This is what we get from the Diaz brothers. But I'm hoping we get that, but I hope it's not a former shell of that, right? I don't want to, it'll be heartbreaking to see him not even close to what it used to be. And but time will tell, right? Time will tell. So we don't know. And the uncertainty is the narrative that I'm looking at going into the fight. How he's going to look the first fight? Is it going to be a bunch of ring rusts? Is he going to be slow? Is he going to have to get caught a couple times? We know their style of fight is to keep going and really drag you into deep water. Take your cardio to the limits because they're athletes. These are pure athletes. These are triathletes, right? So their cardio is on a different level, so they have weaponized that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Does he get hurt too? Because it was a 3-round fight.
No, it is a 5-round.
It's a 5-round
non-title, non-main event, which
perfect break. But it's perfect for the Nick style, the Diaz style, is to put the pressure on you and really work you. Now coming to this fight, he has beaten Robbie already. So this is a fight that he says shouldn't happen. He's beat him already. He should have a bigger name, but he don't even know why he's taking this fight. So the way that talking, that little concerns is interesting. That's the only thing I can say. It's interesting to see. But with the best thing about MMA, we're gonna get to see it. We're gonna get to see what happens. And
you say time will tell, but in the words of John Anik, the main play-by-play, only one more sleep from Friday to Saturday night. So it's coming down the pipe very quick. We will find out quickly. And I'm with you. That interview in which he said, why am I even fighting Robbie? I should be fighting Kamaru Usman, current champion at 170. He expressed a lot of different ideas. And if you ever listen to a Nate or Nick Diaz interview, it's kind of hard to follow, because they're very stream of consciousness in the way they speak. But essentially, he was talking about how he has not enjoyed the actual fighting in a very long time. He does enjoy martial arts, but he hasn't enjoyed the stress and the strain and the beatings associated with this, fighting in the sport. One of the more interesting things that he had mentioned was that, he actually takes a more of a beating in his wins, which makes sense based on what you said about this style. Always forward pressure, always boxing, taking punches to land them, knowing that their cardio can last longer than yours and their chins can last longer than yours. So it is very concerning. We're seeing a older version of a former great come back under seemingly some duress. Is he doing it for money? Is he doing it for the pressure? I don't know, but like you said, he doesn't want this fight. Robbie Lawler, his opponent, like you said, he's lost to Nick in the past, years ago, that was 17 years ago. Go back and watch that fight on Fight Pass, and they're featuring it on YouTube and ESPN Plus. I mean, go back and watch it. I mean, this is a crazy fight. Both guys, Robbie was the favorite in that fight. I think he may be the favorite in this fight now too. I'm not sure, but Robbie has gone on from that in that 17-year period. Robbie's had a lot of wars that brought him to welterweight greatness. There were times in his career at Strikeforce where he fought at 185, times where he thought he was going to retire. And then he ends up cutting back to 170. This is years and years ago. This is 10 plus years ago. Comes back to 170, welterweight, and ends up going on a tear. Gets into a string of 5-round wars with a guy named Johnny Hendricks, who at the time was juiced up on some steroids, but nearly beat the great Georges St-Pierre. And many people say he actually did beat Georges St-Pierre. Georges St-Pierre relinquished the belt. It was a vacant title. And Robbie Lawler and Johnny Hendricks fought for that belt, I think 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. And I think each of those fights went to 5-round decisions, and they took a lot out of Robbie, especially fighting a guy who now we know was on steroids, which was a big problem back then, years ago. Now we have something called USADA, the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, which I had mentioned before, and they regulate. Guys still slip through the system, but they do a great job regulating, make sure these guys are not on anything overly crazy. But so he fights those wars. He gets in an epic fight of maybe the best, most brutal, most gruesome, most epic fight ever with Rory McDonald, who is another incredible fighter who's permanently changed from that fight. He gets in a 5-round war with Carlos Condit, who actually just retired. A natural-born killer, Carlos Condit, who in himself is a legend. And just after war, after war, after war, after war, he comes to where I am in Atlanta and fights a up-and-comer at that time named Tyron Woodley, who ends up starching him, early in that exchange, in the first round. And ever since then, Robbie quite hasn't achieved that greatness again. So is he washed up? Is he spent? Is he done? I don't know. But I do know this. Everybody loves Robbie Lawler. Everybody respects Robbie Lawler for those wars, and he will always be in the hearts of fans for that.
And he's going to come in and he's going to give you everything he's got. He's going to be swinging for the fences. He's going to be throwing bombs. So it's going to be an action-packed fight. It is something that you get a beer and you don't want to miss a single punch on this one.
So you mentioned, is it going to be Evander Holyfield, right? So I don't know. Either guy is, time is not your friend in especially in MMA. In any sport, really, but especially MMA, time is not your friend, and they've both aged. They've both been in wars. Now, Nick has had the longer layoff. Robbie's had some, brutal fights since those wars. His fight against Rafael dos Anjos, he ended up eating something like a 25-punch combination. It was crazy, and he just wouldn't go away because he's just so freaking tough. But in that fight, it was revealed he ended up having some sort of knee injury or some sort of major injury. And then he's just been on a pretty long layoff, nowhere near 6 years. Maybe it's a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. But nowhere near 6 years. He's on a long layoff. Who did he lose to? He lost to Colby Covington not long ago. So anyway, it's going to be interesting. Many narratives to watch. I think what fans want to see is that both men make a great account of themselves. Whoever emerges from this fight, it's much bigger upside for Nick Diaz. Yes. If Nick Diaz wins the fight, he's asserted himself as relevant. He's such a fan favorite. He can get on the mic. He can call for Kamaru Usman, who is the current champ. Kamaru Usman's pretty much beat the entire division. He's got a big fight coming up with Colby Covington, which is a rematch. Okay.
It's going to be a fan favorite, though. It's what's one more the fan wants to see.
Oh, yeah, because that fight was one of the most incredible fights I've ever seen. The welterweight division, in my opinion, 170, that and 155 are two of the most compelling divisions. They have the most interesting personalities, and I think you have the largest pool of people vying for those spots because, most guys fall into those weights once they cut down to these weights. So anyway, if assuming Kamaru beats Colby, and and that's not guaranteed. If Colby wins, there's going to be a rubber match for sure, third fight. But if he if he beats Colby Covington and Nick Diaz calls him out, there's no question in my mind he's going to accept that fight because it's going to be huge in terms of pay-per-views and fans, all that. And if you're not aware, one of the big components of the fighters' pay, they get guaranteed pay to show up. Sometimes they have a contract where they get a win bonus if they win. You can win an extra, set of money for doing something spectacular. Sometimes they're disclosed: fight of the night, performance of the night. Knockout. It used to be called submission of the night, knockout of the night. They changed it to performance of the night. You can win a bonus that way. And then there's a lot of undisclosed bonuses that we never hear about until way later. But the biggest way to make your biggest paydays in this sport is to have us, the fans, on the couch, click buy. And if we buy that pay-per-view, they get a cut of that. And so if you have a fight where a Nick Diaz coming off of a 6-year layoff, coming off of a win against Robbie Lawler, calls out Kamaru Usman, there's your next title contender.
Yes. And talking about title contenders and pay-per-views, our co-main event, Valentina will be fighting who?
Valentina is defending her belt against Lauren Murphy. If you forgot for a second, I don't blame you. A lot of people don't know Lauren Murphy. Everyone knows Valentina. She's got a lot going on.
Right, and Valentina is hands down one of the, I say, close to pound for pound's best fighters between men and women. Well, like I told you before on last week episode, she is going for the ring of the Red Rubies. I think I said Blood Diamonds last time. I'll correct myself. Red Rubies, surrounded out.
I like Blood Diamonds. It's a blood sport.
I don't know. But it's some bad indications around Blood Diamonds.
Yes,
so
blood.
kind of
I get
away.
that.
So we back it up for Red Rubies, whatever they call it. So she's looking at taking the lead with this fight because right now she will be fighting for her 6th Red Ruby, which is amazing. That means she has defended her belt 6 times. So every time you defend the belt, you win the belt, you get one. Every time you defend the belt, you get one. So she's fighting for the 6th one now, which put her in the lead. The next 2 people behind her is Kamaru Usman and Izzy. Those are the 2 people who have 5. Their fights. They still have fights to go. But she will take the lead if she wins the 6th. But I think she will take the lead with the 6th. She has fought Amanda Nunes. She has lost twice to her, but I think the last fight was really close, and you could have found a way, some eyes, to see if she won that fight. But since she dropped down in weight, she has been an absolute killer. One's come close. No one is been in the same realm as her. She has been a straight killer, and I look for her to dominate this fight.
Yeah, it's possible and probable. She's a superhuman. And in fact, one of the rumors on the internet, she might even be a spy, an assassin spy, because she speaks, she'll get on the mic if she wins and she'll speak Spanish. She'll speak her native, I think she's from, one of the stands, like Kyrgyzstan or Uzbekistan, one of those. I'm sorry, I don't know which one. But she is going to speak in that native language. And she'll speak in English. She speaks all these languages. She's a trained martial artist, obviously, fighting in the cage. And then you'll see her, if you watch her Instagram or social media, she's always doing like tactical weapons training as well and traveling the country. So, yeah, very interesting person. And like you say, an absolute buzzsaw. I think one interesting narrative on this whole thing, what if they never made the 125-pound division for women? And they just had the 135. This is another case where, she didn't find the correct weight. She was having to fight up in weight. She knew she couldn't go down to 115. That wasn't possible. So she was having to fight up a weight class because the 125 class did not exist. So she had to fight at 135, which is where she has her 2 losses to Amanda Nunes.
Too big. Just too big.
Too big. She could have never been really discovered in this way and highlighted in this way. But at the right weight, this just proves the point. At the right weight, a person can fit in and be absolutely dominant and become a star, which Valentina is. Lauren's got a chance. I was going to say Lauren might have a chance. I mean, she's probably going to be the biggest underdog on the night and maybe in a long, long time. Okay, Valentina is a minus 1,250. That means to win $100 from Vegas, you have to put up of your own capital $1,250. Whereas Lauren Murphy's up, because it's almost, you think it's almost a guarantee. Lauren Murphy, on the flip side of that, is coming off several wins. She is plus 750. That means if you bet $100, take your $100 to the window and bet her to win, that $100 wins you an additional 750 plus you get your 100 back. I mean, that's crazy. So yeah, needless to say, she's expected to lose.
Yeah, I mean, because I think leading to this point, I don't think I've ever seen Valentina rocked or seriously hurt to you like she's really lost around. We've seen her controlled, but about Amanda, which is a bigger woman who's we have now a goat in her own right. So it's hard to say. It's like between these two women, they're goats in their own weight classes, right? Two dominant women, two complete technicians, very, very skilled at their points. So I'm trying to say, where does she go once she wins and she completes the reign? Where does she go from here? Right? Does she retire on top? Does she just keeps waiting, or does she put herself on the shelf to wait for a slew of more fighters to eventually come and challenge her, or she just keeps going through? But at the at certain point, she's gonna start recycling fighters like possibly John did, and to the point where there's no one left, and you decide to go up, but we already know that weight class that she would go up was already too big. So you're like, where does she go from here?
I think fans would be open to a super fight again. And, when she fought Amanda the first two times, she was nowhere near the level of star that she is today. And by the way, neither was Amanda. They were both coming up, right? And so meanwhile, while Valentina continues to just harden herself with weapons training and martial arts training and travel with her sister, who is the same weight, and her consummate sparring partner, she always has. And you see this dynamic. The Diaz brothers tie right back to it. You see this dynamic among siblings. If there are two siblings in MMA, it can really, really help you in many ways, because you always have a training partner and you can always boost each other up in terms of fan. It's almost like double the marketing because you're always marketing for both.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, Amanda Nunes has moved up in weight. She does not have an ab that you can see. She has become a mother, and her partner is the one who gave birth. So she didn't go through the pregnancy, but she's become a mom, and she's incredibly wealthy after several big wins with those pay-per-view points. And and she's been in title fight after title fight after title fight. So she can probably retire very comfortably. She's a star. The fans would demand a rematch between those two because each is different. There's a compelling potential reason that Shevchenko could win, but could you get Amanda to drop back down to 135? I don't know. So both two fighters who have been so dominant that you don't know what to do other than to make a super fight. And I'd personally like to see that. Lauren, I mean, I don't want to write her off. The truth is, this is MMA. And one of the reasons we watch it is for the craziest of surprises, which can happen. It's not likely going to happen. Probably not going to happen. Look for Lauren to get beat up, dominated, but maybe she pulls off an upset, and that would be freaking awesome. Let me hit you with one thing. We're talking about these two girls as two of the GOATs, greatest pound for pound ever. Is Alexander the Great Volkanovski, who is the one half of the main event, champion out currently at 145, is he slowly becoming the GOAT at 145? He's got wins over Max Holloway. He's got wins he's got a win over Jose Aldo. Now this guy could sneakily and quietly become one of the pound for pound greats. What do you think?
It's still hard. I know he beat Max twice, but that second fight, once again, it could have go either way, right? And some argue Max won that fight. Some say he didn't, right? So it's going to be.
I personally thought Max won that fight. By the way, I personally thought Max won that fight.
Same. I felt that way, but it is what it is. The judges came down the line, and he has moved on, right? He has defended. He's fighting Ortega, which is a really interesting fight going forward. Ortega doesn't mind, because he has to get in. He's the stature size. Ortega's gonna be a little longer, but Volkanovski's gonna have to get in and really land some shots. He lands some leg kicks, but it's gonna be interesting to see what Ortega does. He looked like a world beater the last time he fought, right? He shaved his head completely, a whole different look, and it was a whole different person. And he looked amazing. He looked much more. Everything's changed from the last time he fought Max. He went back to the training board, adjusted some things, really evolved, came back and showcased it. And boy, did he showcase it, right? So it's gonna be. I would love to see like where is Ortega gonna take this? Is he gonna try to take it to the ground, or is he gonna try what is he gonna do, right? So I know what Volkanovski is gonna do. He's gonna get in. He's gonna try to wrestle, try to get inside, build dirty box, get him in. But I'm really interested to see what angle Ortega takes.
All great points, especially on the style side. With Volkanovski. Sorry, I keep missing that. Here's the thing, man. He's at 145 now as the champ. Now, granted, he's going to be cutting weight to get to 145 pounds. This guy used to weigh 215 pounds as was a professional rugby player in Australia. Okay, so he's a natural athlete, but he's short and he's squat, and he used to be a lot bigger. He's very compact and powerful. But he's a true mixed martial artist, and he has a style. Some might call it boring. I call it masterful. It falls in line with the Georges St. Pierre style of fighting, where you literally adapt to the scenario that you need to and nullify your opponent. I don't believe Andre or Alexander's gotten a finish, a dominant finish, because he certainly didn't finish Max.
No.
Yeah. So I don't think so. He didn't finish Aldo. That was a decision as well. So he's just a really good fighter. He knows how to get inside, use leg kicks, mix dirty, everything you said. I would say Ortega's more of a specialist. I mean, obviously he's more of a specialist. So the backstory behind Ortega is that he grew up in the mean streets of was a LA area, in a very rough neighborhood, gang activity, all this stuff. He finds and falls in love with jiu-jitsu and becomes this jiu-jitsu ace, world champion. He's an incredible jiu-jitsu practitioner who trains under Henner Gracie, in the direct Gracie lineage of jiu-jitsu, that soft art, they call it. It's the art of basically ground fighting, particularly with emphasis on submissions and positional changes. So it's not exactly like the wrestling you might have seen in high school, where it's a lot of just pushing each other up against the cage. The wrestling they do in the Olympics, it's more of a submission-based, martial arts-based type of grappling, and he's an absolute master at it. He's become better at boxing. He got worked, absolutely outclassed by Max Holloway. But his fight against Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, he beat the Korean Zombie pretty handedly. He did it with a lot of crisp boxing. He's also knocked out Frankie Edgar with boxing. So he can box. He can box. I'm not saying he's gonna beat Triple G, or any of that, but he can hold his own. But he really is a striking specialist, or excuse me, a submission specialist. And with that thick neck, positional awareness, really good intelligence, I don't know if you're going to be able to sub Volkanovski. It's possible. I don't know if you're going to be able to do it. So he must have to stun him on the feet, and that's where that height and length matters. But I got to imagine Volkanovski's used to being the shorter guy. He was definitely a shorter guy against Max, but interestingly, Max Holloway has these very short arms, a 68-inch reach. He's got one of the shortest reaches, and so he may not even have had a reach advantage over Volkanovski. I don't recall, but he had a height, but not a reach.
So do Ortega try to keep him a distance with the jab, or you think he tries to just suck it? Like he allows him to come in to play more into the jiu-jitsu game, right? And now playing that game, the power's there, right? So now you have to deal with the power of Volkanovski, but getting in close, you have better angles to work in jiu-jitsu, or do you stay on the outside and try to keep him at range, wait for him to shoot, and then go from there? Or do you allow him in?
Yeah, I have no clue. My personal take, I don't think Brian Ortega is going to win this fight. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close. I mean, he can clip him, he can catch him with his powerful hands, and that would happen at length. You're not going to see necessarily dynamic kicks coming from Brian Ortega. You will see kicks, but not dynamic spinning kicks or long range attacks. You may see a leg kick here and there, but he's not a big kicker. Volkanovski, on the other hand, does throw a lot of leg kicks and will chew the leg up with leg kicks. So that's a big part of Volkanovski's game. So be ready for that. And that's great when stepping into that middle range. Bow, bop, 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 that big inside calf kick. So that's interesting. All that's interesting to me.
Yeah, but they soften if you Ortega applies pressure, it's hard to kick moving backwards. So all these elements, is waiting to see what plays out with that, and that's why I'm waiting to see what plays out.
So
It's just what's the game plan, and then on next is what's the narrative for both these fighters, right? So if Volkanovski wins, do Max how impressive Max looks on his last fight? Does Max get another
get a
shot?
third fight.
Does he get a third fight? Right. We know he'll probably get the fight against Ortega again for that second. If Ortega's a champion, he'll get that. I'm pretty much sure of that. But if Volkanovski wins, who's next for him? If not, how arguably is saying Max is not still one of the top contenders for the belt.
I don't know. I would personally, of course, I want to see Max get another shot at that. And he will, at some point, I guess, have another chance, if he keeps winning. I don't know if I'm ready for it quite yet. I feel like, it hasn't been that long. And we haven't seen Korean Zombie, who does have a loss against Brian Ortega. I get that. But Korean Zombie's coming off of a big win over a up-and-coming guy in Dan Ige. I mean, he could call for a shot. And again, we're at the point where a dominant champion is defending that belt, starting to get those rubies, diamonds across their belt, and they're defending their belt multiple times. Well, there are only so many contenders, So I think this is a case where maybe fight Max, maybe go for someone new in the Korean Zombie, who a lot of people love, old school fans especially. And has a unique market in Korea. There's not a lot of UFC fighters from Korea. So there's a lot of potential upside in looking at Chan Sung Jung. But one thing
I think that'll be Max's next fight. If you promoting that, I think Max Holloway, that'll be the contender fight. Because if you're saying Max need another fight and Korean Zombie needs one more fight, a decent name, that's who you pair up. That's what I would like to see.
Someone just called Max Holloway out. Oh, it was Giga Chikadze. Remember, we were talking about Giga Chikadze, but it might be a little early for that. I think when we were talking about his fight a few weeks ago, he was number 11, something like that, and he's moving up. So, I'm interested in all that from a styles perspective. I think one thing you said spurred a thought of mine. If he does come forward with big pressure, Brian Ortega comes forward on Volkanovski with big pressure, and but it's hard to kick backing up, right? So if you don't back up, you try to move laterally. You don't have the reach. You can try to move out to the side, or you can go in forward. If you go in forward with a big takedown, which Volkanovski has, now you're right in that you're still in a dominant position because you're on top, but you're in a spot where the submission ace can start to play, grabbing at your neck, setting up arm bars, leg locks, whatever. So, when I think you're right. One thing to watch is Brian Ortega going to come with forward pressure in order to spur that counter reaction from Volkanovski and then be on the ground? And then if that doesn't happen, he's the guy controlling the pace, he's controlling the fight, and he's throwing the bomb. So man, that's a good one. But I still don't think he's going to win. I go with Volkanovski on that. Alexander the Great, baby.
I'm holding my pick close to my chest right now. Still undecided.
I'm putting my one last piece of backstory on that. These guys did host the Ultimate Fighter. We talked about the Ultimate Fighter card a few weeks ago. These guys were the opposite coaches. And one thing that's kind of boiled up is that Brian Ortega was always late to various events and caused everyone to have to wait, which Volkanovski found to be pretty unprofessional. And he's just been calling Brian Ortega basically a selfish, phony, unprofessional, all these things. So they're a little bit, it's kind of lame as far as feuds go. Because the guy's late to practice and media obligation. But hey, whatever you got to grab on.
Anything to build a fight, right?
Anything to build a fight. So there's a little bit of bad blood there, and that may make it a little interesting. So if you go back and watch the face-off videos from earlier this week, you'll see that it's pretty heated between the two. So interestingly, I think it's mostly coming from Volkanovski, though. I think he's good, but he's lucky. You want to talk about this pay-per-view points? You got Nick Diaz and you got Valentina Shevchenko as supporting roles here. I think my man Alexander the Great's about to get a big payday.
Yes.
Anyway, y'all, we really appreciate you tuning in. Please, if you like this content, like, subscribe. If you don't like it, still like and subscribe, and drop us a comment as to how we can improve. We'll take your love messages. We'll take your hate messages. We're always trying to get better, just like these fighters are. And we just can't wait to see you. So hit those buttons, and we can't wait to see you next Friday to talk about the aftermath and the upcoming fights. Y'all have a great weekend and enjoy the fights.